Sounds right. Sounds right. Sounds right. Sounds right.
Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Devontae Colonel, joining you once again for another episode here at the Inspired Challenge Podcast. Thank you, everyone that clicked on. I'm excited for today's episode because this is going to be the first of its ilk. We're going to be talking with this man today by the name of Eugene, and we're going to be getting into his story of immigration and coming from Moldova to the U.S., the effects that had on him growing as a young boy, a man, some experiences he had, his journey towards understanding himself, and it's just going to be a great conversation. So, Eugene, please tell the people about your name, age, where you're from, and what you do for work, as well as your favorite hobby.
Hi everyone, my name is Eugene Rotary. I'm 44, almost 45. Came here from Moldova. It's a small but very proud of itself republic in Eastern Europe. I speak Russian language as my first language, Moldavian, Romanian is my second language, and English is my third language. At the moment, I'm preoccupied with the independent research. Before I was doing research and development in material science, chemistry, photonics, it's everything on the intersection of chemistry and physics. But after some time, I decided to pivot a little bit and implement my expertise in something beneficial for everybody. Of course, it's very new, therefore it sounds absolutely nonsense. That research is my hobby today. Besides that, I have other weird hobbies like finding super cool shows on YouTube with the purpose of not just entertaining myself, but finding some very rare scientific information.
Love it. So, man, thank you for that thorough explanation there. Appreciate it. Oh, and a question I do ask the guests that I forgot is your relationship status.
I'm single, never been married. I guess I've been so much preoccupied with my hobbies that I forgot to do that.
Oh man, where's my? Hey, I know. So I know that's a growing trend now.
It may change. I don't promise anything.
Yeah. Okay. So Eugene, man, I am very interested to get into, especially because you've taken the journey that you took. So for those that don't know, before we got on the show, Eugene was telling me about how he had written a book, and through writing this book, he had learned how taking on your memories from things and writing them is a great way to be able to kind of discover self a lot more. And it's a process that takes way more intentionality than most people ever give it. And so I'm curious now, I'm sure that the way that you would talk about your childhood in the past is completely different than it was before you took on this that task of writing the book. So I'd love to hear about what your home life was like, how you grew up, and the environment, and how that shaped you, your experience as a young person.
I wanted to write a book, so maybe everybody can read it, but this time it wasn't a book for everybody to read. It was for my primary audience would be myself, and it was more a journey of discovering where I'm coming from, where I'm coming to. It turned out that after coming to the United States in 2022, when I just graduated from my Department of Chemistry with master's degree, I I found out that America is so different from Moldova that it felt like I'm on a different planet. And the logical conclusion was to adapt to this situation rather than to drag all my history. So I decided to forget uh, m- my childhood, maybe. Uh, at that time, it was also, as I realize now, a betrayal of everything I had. That's
Interesting.
something that wasn't obvious until almost 20 years later. And taking a course on personal branding,
Mm-hmm.
we were suggested to write a story of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And it brought up some interesting discoveries. So I was born in the Soviet Union. And it was absolutely different reality for me from what I've faced when I came to the United States. Especially when you're a child, all the memories are bright. You have your loving grandmother around you, your parents. You don't have to worry about anything. Therefore, you grow. You don't realize what you'll be facing in the future. And then, for the first time, the reality has changed when the Soviet Union collapsed. You can imagine the country you live in suddenly disappears from the map. And that was the first instance of my personal crisis, I would say. Then, well, on the physical level, nothing special happened. So people kept on living their lives. The businesses changed. Now people had to struggle for their bread and survival. That was an interesting transition because now some people were wealthier and they started measuring their success differently, and that had an impact on how they feel, of course. And eventually, I could feel that too because I could feel the struggle of my parents.
And how old were you exactly when that all began to where you could start to feel the impact of that change?
It would probably be after I came here, worked for a company in behind the closed windows, and because it was an optical lab, so no light is allowed. And I was really bored there and figured that I don't see where my future goes, and that makes me uh, hurt.
Yeah, 100%. Age wise, what number would you attach to that?
29.
29? Okay. Man. So that is something that I think it's very hard for a lot of people to conceive of, like that kind of collapse that happens. I mean, depending on generations, of course. 2008 was something that a lot of people experienced where they kind of felt like they lost everything, instability and whatnot. And then before 2008, what was the next one? COVID was another one for a lot of people. That affected everyone. But I can imagine, yeah, as a young adult, that's like trying to get his things together. That shakes up a man. So what were some traits that each of your parents that had that you see translated into you from in your childhood?
My parents both are were from education. So my mother was teacher at school, and my father taught physics at college. And both my grandmother and my grandfather were also college teachers. And
Hot dog.
therefore, it doesn't mean that you're good in life, but that means that you constantly get higher standard requirements from them. And that doesn't make a person happier.
Yeah. I was telling Eugene that when I send out the show template, typically most people read it and they say, okay, love the questions. Everything's fine to go. Eugene is one of maybe 2 or 3 people that actually responds with like answers to questions, and not only answered questions, he answered every single question. I know that's a lot of work right there because that's 21 to 27 questions on that thing. So for him to answer that, I mean, that is the teacher's way of like go through it, answer everything properly, make sure you give some type of response. So go ahead.
For me, answering questions on the list is not obeying the rule or just being obeyed or but it's more if I have questions to answer, I look at those as solving a problem. Therefore, if I find the question and I don't have an answer, I'm trying to figure why I don't have that answer ready. Or so it's a mental work. So I look at things and challenges in life as mental challenges.
And I appreciate that approach to it because taking on something that is a challenge for you to answer and seeing it as an opportunity to see like, why don't I know how to answer this? It's a kind of introspective way to approach it. Whereas a lot of people might say, I just don't know. What the heck? What kind of question is this? That approach I appreciate. Go ahead. You had the thought?
I like the metaphors of everything that we have in life. And I look at them as metaphors with problems like physical problems. So if you just toss something away, it doesn't mean that it will not come back. It actually might just pivot around and accumulate even more inertia. So you might face it, but with a greater mass or impact.
Hit you with that full boomerang, but now it's picked up an extra 10 miles an hour.
It is. And it's interesting. Our world is, for me, I look at it, well, it's not a secret. It's all like fractal structure. And different. We might have different ideas what a fractal is, but the idea is that basic structure repeats itself so many times. It builds more complex structures, like where our bodies are built of molecules, and the molecules are absolutely the same everywhere. But we're also different, so that just creates a plurality of different forms. And that's just the basic idea how the world is around us is built. So it's built of basic things, but eventually the variety of events, phenomena, circumstances is infinite around us.
Absolutely. I want to ask you about your the way that your career was shaped, and you had kind of gone through like a speed run of it, but was there any point that as a chemist what were some of the struggles that you faced going from getting the degree to the work that you tried to get into and then where you ended up getting into work?
After graduating from high school, I still had no idea of what I want to do. My grandmother was a chemist. She actually developed food for Soviet astronauts. And you can imagine there is a lot of science. Everything has to be nutritious, very compact, no extra liquid, because there was a weight limit for those first boosters.
Was did she do work for the MREs that they use for like military purposes and whatnot?
The way business was structured in the Soviet Union, there were certain institutes specifically working on a problem. So in my home country, in Moldova, there was Food Institute, and she was working in that institute. So
Gotcha.
it was probably the like one of the major food institutes in the Soviet Union.
Gotcha. Okay. And so you were saying your grandmother was a chemist, and because the first question was, how did you move into what you're doing today? So, sorry, I did cut you off. Continue.
I like the topic, although at that time I realized that chemistry is not going to be my bread and butter in the future. But because it was the last resort of getting somewhere in the college, I actually picked chemistry as figured I was good at it. And looking back at my successes in high school or in school, I realized that I could pronounce those long chemical names easily, and my schoolmates were surprised, and it wasn't really a miracle for me. Like saying something like pergidrophenantren wasn't the problem.
Oh my goodness.
That's a short one.
Oh man. So you had that skill going for you.
I loved it, so I learned it, and I was good at it. I didn't realize it's going to be my passion later.
Okay.
But basically, science is something I liked, and I grew up within between books on like physics, chemistry. At first, those looked like hard to understand, but over the years, I could actually browse and recognize formulas in them. That was interesting, but it was just a game.
Okay, and that's fun when you can find some fun and gamification of
It
the
was a
thing
way
that you
to
get into.
entertain myself because my parents were busy at work. My mother used to work at several places at one point, and there was no much attention I was getting. For sure.
Yeah. So with them working so much, like, where did you get a lot of influence from, besides the influence of like the fields that they were in, as far as like friend groups and things like that? How did you cultivate those things?
Soviet Union, especially in the last years before it in 91, was great for building educational programs for children. Therefore, high school education was at very high level. And I was lucky to know or be a student of very good teachers. And one teacher on who taught mathematics and geometry, she suggested us subscribing to a magazine called Quantum. At that time, I thought, I'm not good at physics or science. Why would I need that? But later on, I really appreciate that magazine had problems that were solved by students at the top colleges, and even trying to figure or understand how I would approach that problem actually built the resilience of my problem-solving mind later on.
Love it. Awesome. So would you work with some of these students and like you guys would collaborate for the answer?
Unfortunately not, because after the collapse of the Soviet Union, all the structures started to fall apart, and therefore those great communities were not supported anymore. In fact, everyone wanted to make some money, so my college mates, one of those was selling plastic bags at the marketplace because people had to make some money.
Oh man, Yeah, to see those things come down, I mean, and it always seems like it's the things that stimulate the mind that are the first things to get the cuts versus the things that are I mean, obviously certain things that are like vital infrastructure pieces, those stay around. But yeah, you see, even with school budget cuts that happen across the U.S., typically it's always targeting the like liberal arts and things like that, or music programs, budget cuts, things like that. So
I
hate
have
to
no
hear it.
judgment on. I mean, I wouldn't judge what happened because it was a natural course of
Right.
things. And what happened, all the sciences were declining. But at that time, we started seeing computers like for the first time. In Moldova, it was much later than, let's say, in America.
Okay.
And I was salivating over computers in the store, and I didn't know what they do, but I knew that I want one.
When did you guys get dial-up? Because I think in the U.S. we got dial-up, I want to say somewhere between 95 to 98, I think it
Yes.
was.
After I invented it.
Oh.
So even before seeing those computers in stores, I approached a friend of mine who had the computer at home and was like a computer geek. And I asked him, what if the information could be transferred via phone lines? Wouldn't that be cool? And he said, yeah, that's called modem. And I thought, well, yeah, good, but at least I figured that.
You know what that sounds like? It sounds like back in college, I had the idea of what if there was a service that went out and picked up people's groceries for them and purchased their clothes and their foods and dropped it off at their door, and people could pay for that. And people were like, I don't know, that sounds crazy. Who's going to want you to grab their groceries? They're going to be afraid you'll poison it and da-da-da. And then fast forward to 2024, more than 10 years later, wouldn't you know it, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Instacart, all of these things. And I'm like, I came up with it.
Of course, having those ideas, I thought that maybe if I invent something, I can actually help my family and become rich or have a happy life. And of course, then you start trying many different ideas, and you find out that people already do that, or they don't work out that
Right.
well. But that's just the beginning of the process, and that's where I am now. So right now, I think I have an idea that's worth working on it. It takes a lot of time and effort, but the seed, the wise idea was contained in those ideas we had before. We just didn't know many other things.
Yeah. Just
Uber was not the first one to
certainly
come
not.
up.
Yeah.
Apple was not the first one to come up with the idea of smartphone.
Yeah, there was just a difference in who could raise the money to expand more research on it, who could optimize on things.
Time,
Right.
and I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but Rupert McNaught
Yes,
was here a few weeks ago.
he was.
And
Shout out to Rupert. Oh, wait, I got to. Shout out to Rupert.
And the community, the entrepreneurial community, is developing fantastically. As I started watching it several years ago, and thanks to all those people who think of the future of other people around in the community.
Absolutely. It's that type of community that allows for. I mean, this show I've probably had within the past 2 to 3 months probably half of those were filled with people that I've met from these networking events, and then those people connecting me with more people as well. So the entrepreneur community has been immensely helpful in helping me to be able to have content, to be able to bring it to people, to be able to cover, you guys different stories and to learn about all of you, and to share your experiences with an audience.
Those people provide, I would say, fuel for the development of the community, which is super important.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. Very good to say. Tell me about the kind of interpersonal relationship that you had with your father specifically and your mother specifically, and what were some keystone pieces of the ways that you interacted with them. I know this wasn't on the template I sent you, right?
I'm trying to figure it. So we love our parents. When we have good relationship with them, but sometimes we have misunderstandings. And I remember I could sense that I'm talking about the same thing when I'm talking to my father about something I like or the ideas he likes and understands. But at some point it would be like a stumbling over rock. So, and I would feel that it's against the rules that we have set before. But besides that, I'm grateful to my parents because I could see so much, and we had great time, like going to the seashore or camping in the woods. Those were like fantastic times, and I couldn't find anything resembling that here for an obvious reason. I didn't have like my parents traveling.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And were there any young love interests that kind of crept their way into your young adult life as you were coming up that inspired, whether it was maybe what college to go to or a certain job opportunity that you had?
The college was very close to the house we lived in. Because it was actually allocated to my grandfather by the college. And there were a lot of beautiful loves going by, but they were not mine. Yes, I never, like, at that college years, I never succeeded, like, in my relationships. In fact, I was quite shy from communication with many people. And there were reasons for that. It wasn't a very safe environment in general. Although I traveled across the city, I felt comfortable about talking to other people. I just didn't have enough confidence in establishing like relationships.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense, especially in those years. A lot of men are still developing their confidence. They don't know themselves as much. They haven't experienced enough. So that makes a lot of sense there. Okay. Makes sense here. Let me see where we want to move this into here. You had mentioned also that you were influenced by Bruce Lee.
As going back to my school years, when I was 10 and the end of the Soviet Union brought some movies. It was a funny thing because so in the Soviet Union it was illegal, especially the ones brought from abroad. Because Soviet Union viewed that as the threat to the security
Sure, like a type of a propaganda could be.
Therefore, people were not allowed to bring tape players at all. Some of them did, but after the end of the Soviet Union, there was an influx of those technologies.
Mm.
And with those, we were getting great movies. Well, great and very new to what people used to see in the Soviet Union. It wasn't that boring, although very interesting movies, but it was now very entertaining. Terminator, Star Wars, Bruce Lee movies. And then as kids, we used to go and we desired to watch as many as we could.
Right.
It was difficult. Actually, you had to pay money. You had to ask your parents to either give you money, or there were not many ways to get in the shows otherwise. And we debated as kids, who is stronger, Bruce Lee or Arnold Schwarzenegger? My favorite one was Bruce Lee, and especially later on, as I figured he had a deep, interesting views on life, philosophy, which I was very sympathetic to.
Bruce Lee had some very wise thoughts when it came to being like water, for example. I know that's a famous one.
I love that one. Yeah.
Do you remember how exactly does it go for the audience who may not have heard it?
Be formless, shapeless, like water.
Yeah.
You can pour water in the teapot, it becomes a teapot. You pour water in the cup, it becomes a cup. Be water, my friend.
Yeah. Be like water, my friend. And it's I love that, and I know a lot of people love it, and they find wisdom in it. But I think that's amazing because there is actually a similar sentiment that is expressed in the Bible, which says that Paul talks about when he goes and he talks to different groups of people. He says, to the Jew, I became a Jew, and to the Gentiles, I became a Gentile. So that's an interesting kind of parallel there. This idea of the places or the environments that you may be in have this flexibility and ability to be able to be in that environment seamlessly so that you may work your purposes that are going on in there.
In modern terms, we call it flexibility, although it does not really discover all the meanings. But also, in addition to the identity crisis that I've mentioned, being torn between Superman, superhero, or Bruce Lee, well, also superhero, but of a different kind, we had no access to religion, really. Therefore, Bruce Lee, in a way, brought up Eastern religion or mindset.
Right.
But these changes, political changes, like collapse of the Soviet Union, I would compare them like a huge wave falling on the shore. It brings a lot of shells, sand, and you're basically trying to figure or swim in that mess. And before everything settles, you need to figure what to do. And of course, if you have done that experiment and swam in this water, then you know that if you're being stiff, then you're gonna face that drown.
Oh yeah.
And then you just figure that there is no reason for that anymore.
The amount of just, there had to be a somewhat of a sense of, and you talk to it like these, almost the salivation that you all as kids and young teens had when the movie started to come in and just wanting to be able to get it more. I can only imagine like, hopefully it was the best of the best that was able to kind of wash up on shore, and like the things that were the lesser healthy elements of U.S. Customs and Western things didn't too much permeate into that shoreline.
I guess everything did get there, but then we had like social limits. So as kids, we were not allowed to go to see like adult movies. But that doesn't mean that we didn't know about them.
Yep.
Watch them later.
When you have more resources, right?
Right.
Oh man. So as you did mention the idea with the identity crisis, unpack that a little bit more and the way that you really went about detangling all these different portions to settle into the identity you now have.
What helped me, of course, like education helps you figuring certain things, but the conflict within stays with you, and it becomes a problem. Then you accumulate this desire to solve the problem. Then it becomes your idea or manic idea that you really need to do something about it. So that discomfort leads you to searching for a way.
So it was the discomfort that pushed you to something. And do you think if there was not the discomfort, there would not have been the desire to find out the answer more?
I think that it's more or less established approach or idea in business, although it's not commonly taught, but what SEALs are taught, like that's what I heard. When they graduate, they're thrown in the pool with tied hands and legs.
Yeah.
And they're given certain time to not suffocate there. The ones who succeed test, they stop fighting or trying to stay underwater.
Yeah.
They sink to the bottom of the pool. They touch the ground. They push off the ground, and they swim up. Therefore, definitely reaching the bottom is not a bad thing.
That's
in your emotional journey.
Man, that is a big thing, because in the time that you were coming over, and for clarity again, that was, you said 2022, right?
2002.
2002. Okay. Whew, got it. 20 years off there.
Years. Yeah, a lot of twos.
Oh man. Yeah, a lot of twos. So in that time, I know that assimilation was something that was much more of a pushed idea that everyone kind of agreed upon at that time. And now the idea of assimilation is still present, but it is not something that is universally agreed upon when it comes to the full swath of the country. What do you think about the change of how people viewed assimilation, knowing that some of your untangling happened because you were kind of pushed to kind of get there?
I cannot say on the global level, just for myself. When I came here, I was in the country which at some point was considered or suggested to us as the axis of evil.
Oh, yes, yes,
back
that's
in the
right.
Soviet Union.
Yeah.
I still remember those newspapers for the
Mm-hmm.
Boy Scouts or pioneers, as they were called.
Yeah.
And we were reading about Samantha Smith
Mm-hmm.
doing this and that for peace, and
I forgot
America
that.
is threatening
Yeah.
the entire universe.
I forgot about how crazy the kind of that back and forth between Russia, not Russia, that Moldova area and surrounding was, and how they just used to just the propaganda against each other was just
And apparently the same thing existed here, but I've learned it only after I came here. And you can imagine, technically, I betrayed my homeland for coming here. Although there were no more Soviet Union. But
Yeah.
it's still in your mind. You're going somewhere you were never supposed to go to. And that creates even more, even less ideas in your head. It's and I think it's just an example of how much information is misleading
Yeah.
around us, and there is no, in my opinion, there is no single truth outside of us. So therefore, it's important to like establish your own core idea, which will never fail on you.
Yeah, yeah. And so I know you only wanted to speak to how your experience was in it, but I am curious on your perspective about the way that the immigration conversation is had and the way that the difference of how the culture of the U.S. is now with the idea of assimilation versus 22 years ago. And do you think it's a helpful change that has gone in, that there's a greater desire to not push for assimilation as much nowadays?
I view it as a natural way of things developing, and just to say it, even if it may seem not the best way it is right now, but on the other side, the rest of the world also has no idea, and like we live in a post-industrial world, and as I understand, there is no model for the future generation. Like we now live in a digital world, and what are the implications of that? Some people, there were some predictions that the world will end by 2035. But that just means that people have no idea. And therefore, on the global level, I understand there is no philosophy ready to replace the modern world. And Europe is suffocating, I would guess. It doesn't know who to help, who to be afraid of. Considering the events, the war between Russia and Ukraine,
Right.
So even in those countries, there is a lot of very little idea about what to do and where the world is rolling. But that's not that dramatic. The world will be okay.
Right. Another interesting thing that came up that we talked about is we talked about running, and you had mentioned that you thought you discovered why some people like running or do not like running.
I thought that's my...
I know, so to the audience, I know this is like a hard change in direction from what we were just talking about, but as it happens. Go ahead.
It was probably one of my discoveries, just like I mentioned, inventing the modem before. At some point, I found out that I feel better when I run. I have figured that in high school, I like that. my grandfather was a runner, although I wasn't that good. I didn't get any trophies.
Oh, you did some amount of track with it?
I didn't do track. My grandfather did.
Okay.
So he at some point he was a champion in the
Oh, wow.
Republic.
Oh, wow.
But I figured that I feel good when I do that, and it instantly, well, not instantly, but it changes your mood for the day. And after maybe dozens of experience like that, I figured that it changes your reality and the view you see the world.
As someone with a background in chemistry, help us to understand why that would happen on a chemical level.
That's I never done chemistry strategically in terms of studying neurophysiology, but I think that's a very and super cool thing. Probably, like in my mind, that's the best I would ever do if I tried to studying neurophysiology. Studying chemistry definitely gives you an idea of how little molecules can affect the course of the entire reaction, especially if those are catalysts. Those are super cool phenomena. Like chlorophyll is there for just one atom of magnesium, and therefore we have neuromédiators in our brain. They are produced when we run. They are produced as well, and I think that's something. That's the sorcerer's stone or something that actually can affect the course of your life, and you choose if you want to dig for that.
You said what was that?
Physiology.
No, the
neurotransmitters.
Okay.
So
you said those are developed while you're running?
Dopamine. There are a number of chemicals, although there were no chemists on purpose synthesizing those. For some reason, that's the way our brain develops them.
Yeah.
They are developed and they help in our brain, and they help transmitting neurological impulses. What that helps is everything, our thinking, our sensations develop all on the neuromédiators.
Okay. So why do you think some people just hate running? Why do some people absolutely just can't stand it versus some people swear by it and they're like, I gotta run me my 5 miles a day, 10 miles a day?
Another thing I will touch later is something called micropsychology. Basically, you can deduct simple ideas from something greater. For example, you can split the problem of why people don't run into smaller answers. I think our brain solves this problem in the morning, and it's not that we have no neurotransmitters, no dopamine in our brain when we decide not to run, but like when I'm in the bed and trying to wake up, my brain has an equation in mind, trying to figure the probability of getting those endorphins from getting more sleep. Why? Because actually, it's more beneficial. It might be more beneficial to us at the moment, and our brains knows that with the greater probability, 99.99 something percent, it will be safe and comfortable if it will continue doing that. And there are several other ideas going into that. It's once it's predictable, the consequence I keep on sleeping and nothing bad's gonna happen. Really. And I have a great vision of the future. Well, it's predictable again, and it's it gives me some satisfaction. On the other side of the equation, I have running. It's like putting yourself in an uncertainty, and then with a very little probability. I mean, with the unknown probability of me getting joy from it, and then it's so far away, and that I will actually like realize that it's enjoyable only when I get up and draw, and after that I realize that it's beneficial for the rest of the day. That's a lot of thoughts, and it's very complex equation compared to the simplicity and reliability of what I had when I didn't wake up.
Yeah, and
So it's a balance.
we as people, we just always seek to do the things that take the least amount of energy from us. If we can,
There's physics and conservation of energy.
right?
The basic, like one of the basic laws in chemistry and physics is the law of conservation of energy, of matter. And I think everything revolves around it. And
Right.
I'm happy I have an idea. Like I solved those problems in school and I understand what it is now. Therefore, coming back to the not skipping answers, questions.
Yeah. And it can be a battle trying to break that would you call it a rule, a law? How would you talk about the
It's
theory?
It's law.
It's law? Okay.
The law of conservation.
So
It can be a principle, depends on how far you want to go.
yeah. Man, it can be tough to break that law, like especially with certain things that are good for you. Like just the other day, I went for a run down the path I always go down. I was running. There's a truck that came up. You know, I sat there. I made sure that they were stopped and all that. Started going. Almost got hit by the truck. I'm like, what the heck? I just almost lost my life from this truck. By the law of conservation.
Right. And
I
then
would
try to convince yourself to get up.
Right.
Next time.
It's like if I'm gonna potentially lose my life, it doesn't make any sense.
What are one of the recent discoveries, and as I mentioned, finding out interesting or good, helpful information on YouTube led me to finding some speech or podcast where a person, neurophysiologist, says that our body does not understand the language of logic. So we can try to convince ourselves with reminders or higher numbers, like getting 6 figures, or trying to like
Right.
get a benchmark, or
we have to
drop a
attach
weight
like
or something. We don't feel that, and our body has no understanding of anything we cognitively try to understand. What our body understands is the
emotional impact of something,
which is endorphins and those
oxytocin, dopamine,
neurotransmitters. Yes, and therefore, if we want to talk on the same language with our body, we need to when the body asks for water, we need to provide that water
Mm-hmm.
in a basic sense, or
Yeah.
do a reward. Even an ice cream at the end might be sufficient enough for our body to understand and be like, okay, like next time you're okay, you can run.
Yeah.
If you want to achieve like greater success in life.
Mm-hmm. Although ice cream at the end of the run, maybe a little counter.
I don't do that.
Yeah.
But even the mix, vitamin mix during
Right.
workout is something that motivates me. My body understands that taste.
Very true, very true. And I think that's a great thing to point out for people as far as like being able to doing the best to hack like how to be able to break that law. Like you have to, and it's a great point you mentioned. We live in the digital age, as you mentioned, and living in the digital age, we have access to all the information we could ever possibly want. But no matter how much information we consume, we will never act on that information unless there is a chemical, a neural incentive that propels us towards that. I look at that same thing, and that's why I've learned that there is no point in trying to talk to someone who has just no type of connection or desire to understand God, for example, because a person that hates God, essentially, there is some sort of emotional tie, some amount of in-person hurt that has been experienced there, whether it's been a person to person, institution to person.
The bias. Yeah.
A bias. Like you can sit and answer all the questions that an atheist may have for 2 hours, run them around all of the philosophical woes that they have. But until an emotional connection is made for some of these people, they experience something that is spiritually significant, or they see someone close to them whose life gets changed by this for the betterment, there is no amount of logical talk that will suffice for getting this person to change their stance on their hatred for what the religion is.
I agree, and then your subconscious might trust that character from your childhood who said, I will be back, more than trusting a person on the street.
Man, that's such a good point.
We disregard our memory, I think, but everything is recorded. We forget.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's like the person of the child needs to be comforted by something internal as well to be able to accept something that has that negative experience in it.
That's a fact. I have no children, but that's how I understand my own child within me.
So I am curious about like, what is one place of that inner child within you? Just like one issue maybe that you had to learn how to go back and comfort and heal on, so that you were able to either change your position on something or able to move past it in life.
It's a work in progress. I just started negotiating with that kid within me before I didn't know it existed. So I thought I'm just by myself, but I felt like somebody's pulling the strings and saying, hold on, I'm fed up with it. Therefore, I don't have solution, or I have not achieved what I wanted or what was in my mind when I was a child. Yeah.
The string that's being pulled, what or who do you think is pulling that?
That's part of me.
Hmm. Do you think it is some amount of negative self-talk or doubt?
Devices or programs about
Hmm.
unrealized goals, something that we just gave up or really wanted to achieve, but then we're like, okay, maybe next time.
Yeah, yeah. And having to kind of maybe the negative self-talk of like, didn't do that thing and will you do that thing next time? Or will you just not do it again?
Right. So there was no transaction really completed.
Yeah, yeah. And that makes me think of there is, and I forget how the full idea fleshes out, but it goes to be the idea of it is if you're gonna make a promise, at the very least, keep the promise. If not for the other person, keep it for yourself. So that way, when you tell yourself you're gonna do something, you can trust yourself
Yeah, I love
with it.
that wisdom. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
very profound.
yeah, man. So I wanted to move over to, let's see, where do we want to take this here? What are your thoughts on the dating culture today?
I have decided that the pressure, actually, the pressure in my college years was like intense from like both like physiology and like society.
Mm-hmm.
And then you feel like a coward for like having no relationships or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But what I figured out later is that what I'm doing, if there is a meaning, then for me, then it's more powerful than like anything that I might be experiencing currently without understanding of what I want to be. Therefore, finding my, let's say, passion or the idea that I wanted to pursue when I was a kid, I wanted to invent something. Now, as I think I found something niche for myself, a research that I'm doing right now, I'm every time I'm debating with myself whether loser or winner. I still like navigate to gravitate towards thinking I have my great idea and I want to bring it to the end. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was the nature of, well, I mean, of course you can't share too much because you don't want
I
somebody
can
to see
share. I love to share. I can talk about it days and nights. I think it's very, at first strange. At least it sounded kind of weird to me, but it's typing, and typing on the computer. What it was is that typing is not just pushing buttons on the keyboard. My concern was about figuring out a way to understanding how we learn typing, the neurophysiology.
Okay.
It turned out that there is so much unknown that we have keyboards on our desk, but we have no idea what is the meaning of the word QWERTY. So I wanted to dedicate some time to first understand why my fingers don't behave the way I want, why I cannot just learn super fast typing in 2 weeks. And like who didn't tell me the entire truth, and why the computer designers didn't invent a better technology. So I didn't succeed with inventing a modem, but I think it's time to improved the way we learn typing.
Interesting. So you would take, I mean, as you say, QWERT. Anybody looking at a keyboard, you see QWERT. That's QWERT that you mentioned. So if you were to change it, how would you change it to be more, I guess, what would you say, intuitive?
Yes, there are many possible layouts. The problem is that it goes even better. It's symbolic to me to how little we understand about the world around us, because there is no reasonable explanation why we have QWERTY on our computers. It goes back to typewriters. And it was in 1868, the first typewriter, and the QWERTY keyboard was actually invented. And the reason the inventor put the letters in this way is because if you've seen the typewriter, there are cantilevers. They have actually letters that are activated by your fingers pushing on the buttons. They smash the paper with the black ink over it, and they leave an imprint. So when those cantilevers, like accidentally, if you push the buttons too fast, and they have inertia, they have no time to go back. So they basically collapse there and get stuck. What the guy did, he just spread out the most commonly occurring letters as far as possible on the keyboard.
Okay.
There was not much meaning into like sequences of letters. He just wanted to make it more efficient. At that time, typing with the speed of 15 words per minute was super fast because those were metal devices, and actually it was not very pleasant to push on those buttons.
Yeah, I mean,
They
even
hurt.
typing even
They
this,
hurt.
I'm like, ugh, like you start to feel it a little bit. I can just imagine because you had to engage what, like a half a pound of pressure or something like that to get it to do a whole function of typing.
If you
one
don't
letter.
apply enough pressure, there will be no letter. You need to go back, so you waste time. So this ergonomics seemed to be an interesting problem, especially it touches on our physiology, but just this phenomenon gives an idea of how little we know about typing. But then the story goes on because 77 years later, people came up with computers.
Yeah.
But how did this layout get into the computers? It was also an interesting discovery, which made me very excited, fascinated. Actually, the company which purchased the first computer was called Remington. And that company, since the beginning of the last century, was the world leader in keyboards. And they actually wanted to write a code for that computer. And what they did, they actually took a typewriter and put next to it. And of course, the layout was QWERTY. So there was no meaning in using this layout except for the comfort of the typists who already knew how to type it. So it was an invention of like 150 years ago, made 150 years ago, and we still use that layout, although it's not comfortable. We don't know why it's here, why it's suggesting some strange like combinations of letter. But again, that became a metaphor for me to look at the things that I might face on daily or challenges on daily basis. So I look at the keyboard, and if I have questions why the things are the way we have them today, I look at the QWERTY, and like there is no explanation why the first letter is Q.
Right. I guess they said there's significantly less words that start with Q. So this is a great place off on the side where nobody will. I mean, but even that's just ported over from the original typewriter format.
And
So,
besides, today the demand is much greater than then because everybody's using computers.
yeah.
So demand is not just is not a decision point for things we have around us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I see we're getting into our last 15-ish minutes of just kind of free talk here. So I'm going to ask you some quick questions and you give me just what comes off, like right off your mind in it. All right, you ready?
Yep.
Here we go.
All right.
And I know this is going to be an interesting one here, but I want to pose it to you. What is foundational to a healthy relationship, and do these things seem abundant or lacking in today's culture to you? Why or why not?
I always thought it's understanding, although I've been laughed at when I said that to like one of my relationships. So,
Understanding?
mutual understanding.
Okay.
I still see value in that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how without this mutual interaction or like those gears connecting, how like people can be together.
Yeah, and it sounds like the person who may have done the laughing was just incredibly toxic and had a lot of growing to do themselves at that point. Because
I don't know. It was a girl.
all right. Well, as you say, understanding, but a lot of people would say that as communication, the ability to
Yeah.
talk to someone, get your point across, be made clear, and to be able to do it in a healthy
That's
manner.
even better one. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Interesting. The next one is going to be, what is the state of men today? And generally speaking, do you think that men are well suited for relationships, marriage, and to be leaders in their relationships that lead well?
Well, I wouldn't let the men out, let the men down, and I think men are suited for the best. Therefore, there is nothing we lack really, but it's more like soft skills.
Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to you, and I'm going to depart from this a little bit with the last 15 minutes of free talk time. For you, when you look at the idea of dating and whatnot, in your relationship, do you want to be the leader? Do you want to be considered the leader of the relationship, or are you more of a 50-50 type of person? What's your approach to it?
I think it can be shared leadership. Certain things I'm good at. I want to be a leader, but the other things I want to to follow the ideas. So. And actually, our brains, men's brains and female, are different, and that's a physiological fact.
100%.
And therefore, we're suited to solve different tasks. So while men are goal oriented, women are also a fact are like process oriented people. And oftentimes there would be a conflict of misunderstanding.
100%. If both were trying to vie for that full leadership position. And I'm of the opinion that just because a person is the leader doesn't mean that the other person is not a major contributor. So, for example, many women are better with accounting than the men, because accounting can it can have so many more details in it that men might miss. Whereas women are very like, they like to look at every little thing and pick out and the numbers and sorting and, you know, just those kind of more soft skills.
It probably goes to the question number one about communication. How they establish that responsibility.
Yeah, there's definitely an understanding of one's innate abilities and understanding like, I'm good here, you're good there. And so this is what each of us will handle. I guess when I ask about leadership as well, I also mean in a spiritual sense too. Would you seek to be a spiritual leader in a relationship?
It's probably not as obvious, or it's like more subtle as I figure, because women have capacity, as I heard, of controlling emotional side of life better. And I know I can be pretty dull, and my mind can be dull and stubborn in going towards my goal. But that doesn't mean that either approach is less important, because that might be my mission to like go through whatever obstacles or arguments that I face, because I see a like further goal ahead. On the other hand side, if I don't do it right, I don't want to pursue on that path. So if I get suggestion from the side, it might be a good idea to listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be a leader doesn't mean that it is one person's way all the time, right? To be a leader just means that if a hard decision needs to be made and there's disagreement, the merits of each may be discussed, and then an ultimate decision is made by the leader, taking into account the merits of the other thing. So maybe instead of it taking on the plan of one person who would be the leader, instead of it being 100% one person's thing, maybe it's 70% that person's thing, and then 30% of the greatest elements of the other idea. Or maybe if the plan is better over here, then it's saying, okay, you know what? You made a good case. This is what the proceeding action will be now, after having this good discussion and a good logical presentation of why this is a better course of action.
I like the idea of understanding business, because all those ideas about leadership also are very important there. And there are several models of leadership, and it in some cases one is appropriate, one is not, and then there is no things fixed in stone. And it's a dynamic process. Therefore, I didn't have any fixed, like a certain solution. I'd rather try to be water-like.
Absolutely. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is the level of importance that you place on finding a partner?
7.
7? Okay. That's like desire, but not it's like if desire enough, but if it doesn't happen, completely fine with that as well.
If I make it 10, it would have greater chances of failing.
I agree.
If we, let's say, like, I don't know, what is your favorite sport in terms of shooting? Could it be like arrow shooting or shooting guns? But if you fixate your attention on the target, there are greater chances that you will miss. So sometimes it's better to like move your eyesight somewhere, like a little bit to the side. Therefore, I don't give it the highest.
Yeah, and I agree that is good. I will say, I think I think 7 is a bad number, and I'll explain why. Because 7 is the safest number to give something when a person doesn't want to either overcommit to the idea of something or they don't want to seem non-committal to something. So 7 is that kind of lukewarm number. Like, for example, a lot of people will say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like me? How much? It's about a 7. I don't think I really like you, but I don't dislike you. A 7. So I think when it comes to like priority of how people look at their dating relationship
It's
status,
like
for example.
compromise number.
Yeah, it's the compromise number. Whereas a number like a 6 shows, okay, it is a low priority, or a number like 8 shows this is something that is within a scope of some type of focus of my life. So I typically tend to like I like to call out 7 specifically because it is like the universal number of safety pick. So eliminating 7, where does it sit for you? 6 or 8?
5.
5. Okay.
Because I know the priorities. If I'm not able to advance in my thing I know the most, then I would probably lack the core of advancing anywhere else. So
Okay.
I might be wrong because, like, especially in relationship, it might be the high priority is establishing like family. But the world is changing, and therefore, and having like personal, like being confused and all that mess. I'm still like not sure.
I can appreciate your answer because basically it's, if I can't get it all figured out, then it's a 5 because I'd rather not do it than just try to do it and not be prepared for it. And I can appreciate that. Okay. Next question is, are you a person of faith?
Yes, and I don't know who I would be without faith. It's a core for like my personality. Yes.
And when did you take up on your faith in your own right, as opposed to it being family related or anything?
In the Soviet Union, it was officially atheistic country. So the government or society suggested that the Soviet belief in the Soviet regime is the ultimate goal. Therefore, they pushed religion away, and many priests were killed, decimated during Soviet years. Therefore,
and I remember you saying when the Soviet collapsed, that's when religion actually started to be able to trickle in a bit.
Yes. So now churches would gain more rights, but it wasn't an obvious, like straightforward development of the culture. Here, I started attending church when my father passed away. And then you start raising questions about your identity and who we are. So those eternal problems, existential problems, become more important when you face somebody's death.
Yeah, it becomes the highlight for a period of time. For some people, it's the highlight for a couple of months. For some people, it's the highlight for 3, 4, 5 years, until you can get to a place where you feel like you have an answer for that person, where they ended up, and maybe an answer for yourself where you could be looking at going. Yeah. And so what is your lean for your faith? As in, what is your Catholic Christian?
Orthodox Christian.
Orthodox Christian? Oh, okay.
And most importantly, it's not religion by itself,
Mhm.
but of course it's people. And religion, just from the books, would have not much meaning
Mm-hmm.
until you get to communicate with people.
Right.
Therefore, communication was a
Mhm.
part of, or finding community which would
100%.
support was very important.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first scientists said that people are social animals.
Yep.
I would agree on the word social, but animals is like the word they used is
Mhm.
not applied well. They wanted to prove their superiority with this word, like
Right.
over people like being other animals compared to
Mhm.
that person, I guess.
That's an interesting point because, like, they could have said that humans are social mammals, for example, because the word animal means it has a certain meaning, but mammal would describe us well, the subclass of like being that we are with hair that reproduce and give, milk, offspring milk and things like that. So for you, would you say that the relationship that you do seek to have is something that you want to base in faith? And does that contribute a little bit to some of the struggle that you may have had?
I don't make it an intention, but I realized that that's an important aspect for me because eventually, what I hear, you want to choose your partner not based on how she looks like for me, but rather if you're both looking in one direction, so having similar points of view, that's probably like more important.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, looking the same direction in terms of where you're going with your faith, how much you're looking to adhere, study practices, the direction of family that you would like to develop.
I would put it as success in life, although as broad as it might sound, I realized that we're free to decide what is success would be on our personal level. So each person will have in the relationship may have their goals differently, but we might have same idea of how we want to reach those.
Right. A quick question for you as far as our time goes. What is your absolute out time that you need to be out by?
Could you please say again?
What time do you need to make sure that we don't go past so that it doesn't disturb your day?
Mornings. That's something that...
Or rather, I guess my question is, so the show's scheduled to end at 2:30. So it's 2:00 now. Typically, I would transition to the closing segment. But I feel like now we're getting on to some deep conversation with some of the dating talk now. But I don't want to continue to go deeper into it as opposed to closing it up if it's going to disturb your day. So that's why I'm asking, like, if you have something at 2:45 or 3:00, I don't want to disturb that by going longer on this topic.
I have plans, yeah.
Okay, got you. So in that case, we will go ahead and go into the closing segments here. So from the conversation of everything that was discussed, whether it's past experience or anything that we talked about here, what are 3 things that you absolutely want to make sure that the audience member can take home and that they are thinking about, meditating on, praying on, that they can take action on?
it's first important to put yourself ahead of any other problem. That means that you might, but you do it first as well, and to have a goal in life. Ideally, it should be a well stated, clear, and you should have an emotional vision of where you want to be, and then be persistent and develop habits. And those are not easy to. They are not given to you on YouTube as suggestions until you put those through and carefully select them through your life, I would say. So you have to develop your own tools to live your life.
Awesome. And then the next part of the closing is, what are any 3 questions that you might have for me? You may ask them and I will answer them completely honestly.
How do you see the future of our small and big Orlando community?
I would say, based off of the players that I've come to know and just the constant influx of people that are coming into it, I think it looks really good. I know that there are some people who have been working on this entrepreneurship community for decades at this point, getting those relationships deeper. I know that the downtown library is a part of it. I know that there's hundreds of different little workshop type things that go on in the area on a whether it's a monthly or yearly basis for people to be able to have access to resources and help too. I just bit my tongue. Sorry. Oof. Sucks to hurt your mouth in a talk show. It's just a matter of if the people are taking advantage of it and indulging in it. And I do think that the Orlando area is an area that does facilitate that hustle and bustle enough that it looks like it's thriving and growing.
Thank you. Do you have plans strictly defined? Like, what are you going to be doing in 2 years, 5, 10?
I do.
Great. And when you, like, going back to my favorite study, when you type, can you touch type without looking at the keyboard? And when do you learn that skill?
So that I can do. So, for example, I can do, I could spell the word, and I have it here. I could spell the word, quarter, for example. I could probably write an entire essay and probably only have a few errors in it. Like I would put maybe, I only make a few errors typing. And I think I got this one totally perfect here. Mm-hmm. And I learned how to do it. There's in school, we had a typing class, and there were a couple of different websites that we had to go onto. And one of them was this computer. It's you're in a flying jet and you have a shield and you need to keep asteroids from running into you. And the way that you shoot them is by typing out words. And the deeper you get and the harder levels you go onto, the bigger the asteroids. So then the first asteroid, it just blows up when you type the letter. The second level of the asteroid, when you blow it up, it leaves another asteroid. And then the bigger one, when you blow it up, it splits into 2 and then 3, 4, and then they get faster and they start to have fireballs that they shoot out from them. So I learned it under these games that got progressively tougher through it. So yeah, that was
cool.
It's a skill that I still keep. I never learned how to do like the unique functions as far as some of these characters, the parentheses, some of the colons and all that. I do have to look at that and be like, okay, right there. Da, da, da.
What would happen if somebody took away your touch typing skills? would you be able to survive?
Huh. You mean like in the world?
More and more digital reality.
So if someone took away my touch typing skills, I mean, that'd be incredibly annoying, but I don't think I could do this podcast if someone took it away.
I appreciate it.
Because I wouldn't be able to make titles. I wouldn't be able to go onto YouTube things.
Okay.
Oh man, that was a fun question. I appreciate that. And the last question to finish us out is, what is something now that you would like to either confess, something that you are struggling with, or just something that you want to give a praise to God about that I and the future watchers of this episode can come around you in prayer about?
My guess would be just everyone may have a quiet moment and like think of the problems they have, and that will help me as well, I guess. That's how I see how it works.
Okay. So the prayers for everyone else to be able to have the quiet moment.
Yes, so if I asked for a prayer for myself, it might not solve the problem, but if we come together and think of like solving our problems, that would also benefit me because we discussed it.
Okay. Sure. So at this time, audience, would you please join me in praying for Eugene here? So here we go. Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time that we've been able to gather together, that we were both able to make the scheduling work and the communications in between work. And we're just grateful to be able to have all the tools, whether it's the typing tools, the communication tools, the ability to receive quickly. We just thank you, Lord, for the way that you've blessed our lives. And just making these things so convenient and easy for us to do. Even the ability to broadcast out to any potential number of people from the comfort of an AC'd room. We just thank you so much, God. And we just want to take this time to lift up Eugene's prayer that everyone would be able to take a moment to be silent in themselves, with themselves, to be able to slow the world around, to be able to consider any type of memories that they may have, whether they be good or bad, to be able to process them, to be able to work them out, to be able to bring them to you, God, so that you can influence them and take away any type of feeling of guilt or shame that they may have and replace it with purpose. We know that all the things that we feel any type of guilt or shame about have purpose when you are in the picture. And so we just pray that everyone listening would be able to indulge in that moment. It's a moment that is beautiful when taken. It's necessary. And it's something that we often push to the side because we justify it with the busyness of our lives. And so we thank you, God, that we get to take this moment. We pray that everyone that has been able to come and view this show has been blessed by hearing Eugene's story, hearing the different topics that we covered, and hearing his perspective on it, and that this can serve as an understanding of a man who has a love for whether it's the way that the mind works or the way that typing works, that they would be able to just resonate with his story, God. We pray that they'll be blessed and have a strong week as this is a Monday, and that everything ahead will just be led by you. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene. I appreciate that. So I want to thank everybody for coming out. Thank you, Eugene, for all of your time that you took to be here. And for anyone that comes on, make sure to tune in for the next episode. We're going to have 4 interviews lined up for after today. There's today, and then there's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Sorry, that's 3. So make sure to have the notifications on for that. We're going to be busy as all can be. And until the next time, everyone, this has been Eugene and Devontae, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of the Inspired Challenge Podcast. Take care. And we are done on the YouTube.